The Taurian warship glided silently through the void, its massive hull gleaming under the distant light of Sol. Commander Deho stood tall on the command deck, 6 fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished surface of his tactical display. His gray skin reflected the blue glow of the screens around him. "Primitive world ahead, Commander," reported Officer Hanbin, eyes fixed on the scanning equipment. "Life signs as expected. Their technology appears minimal compared to ours." Deho nodded slowly. This would be simple, another world to add to the hegemony's growing collection. Their record showed Earth was resource-rich but technologically backward. "Perfect. Send the standard greeting," he ordered. "Inform them of our superiority and present our terms." The message was transmitted toward the blue planet. The crew waited, expecting the usual fearful response. Minutes passed in silence. "Commander, we're receiving a reply," said Communications Officer Yi Jun, surprise evident in her voice. "They're requesting a face-to-face meeting. And they've sent coordinates for a neutral location." Deho's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. "They wish to see us in person? Interesting. Perhaps they want to beg properly." He smiled, revealing sharp teeth. "Prepare my shuttle." The small Taurian delegation landed at the designated coordinates, a flat platform floating in Earth's orbit. Deho expected to see trembling humans, perhaps kneeling in submission. Instead, 5 humans stood waiting, dressed in simple but elegant clothing. They showed no fear. Ambassador Ji Young stepped forward with a slight bow. "Welcome to the Sol system. We are honored by your visit and look forward to productive discussions." Her voice was calm, her posture relaxed. Deho towered over her, his translator converting her words. This was not the reception he had anticipated. Where was the awe? The fear? He straightened to his full height. "We do not come to discuss. We come to inform," he stated flatly. "The Taurian hegemony claims this system. Your resources will serve our needs. In exchange, we offer protection and limited technology. Your people will live under our rule." He expected gasps, perhaps tears. The human delegation merely exchanged glances. Ji Young smiled politely. "Thank you for your proposal, Commander Deho. We appreciate your interest, but those terms are unacceptable." The translator must have malfunctioned. Deho adjusted the device on his wrist. "Repeat your response." "Your terms are unacceptable," Ji Young said again, just as calmly. "However, we are open to discussing fair trade agreements that benefit both our peoples." The other Taurians shifted uncomfortably. This was unprecedented. Subjugation planets never refused. They begged, they pleaded, they didn't negotiate. "Perhaps you misunderstand," Deho growled. "We have weapons that could reduce your cities to ash. Your military is nothing compared to ours." Ji Young nodded. "We understand the disparity in our forces, Commander. That's precisely why we prefer peaceful dialogue. War benefits neither of us." Another human, Advisor Sunho, stepped forward with a data tablet. "We've prepared some alternative proposals for you to consider. They include resource exchanges, cultural sharing programs, and technology trades in areas where each of our species excels." Deho stared at the tablet being offered. No species had ever countered with their own terms. This wasn't how conquests worked. "We will review your suggestions," he said finally, not taking the tablet. "But know that the hegemony has never been refused." Ji Young's expression remained pleasant. "There's always a first time, Commander. We look forward to your response." The Taurians retreated to their shuttle in confusion. As they lifted off, Deho watched the human delegation through the viewport, still standing calmly on the platform. Back on the flagship, the War Council gathered. "Their behavior makes no sense," said Military Advisor Jiite. "Our scans show limited defensive capabilities. They should be terrified." Deho stared at the holographic image of Earth rotating before him. "There must be something we're missing. No species acts this way when faced with our might." Perhaps a small demonstration, suggested Officer Hanbin. Target an uninhabited area? Daeho considered this. No. Something is wrong. We need more information before we act. He turned to his intelligence officer. Review all data on human history. Focus on their conflict resolution patterns. As the Taurian ship hovered at the edge of the system, reports began flowing in. Humans had fought countless wars among themselves. They had developed complex diplomatic systems. They had united despite deep differences. Daeho read the reports with growing unease. They had gravely underestimated these creatures. They weren't simple primitives, they were survivors of their own brutal history, forged in conflict and skilled in the art of negotiation. Prepare another meeting, he ordered finally. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Commander Daeho paced the command deck, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. The holographic display of Earth rotated slowly before him, surrounded by data streams that his officers were frantically updating. This cannot be correct, he muttered, stopping to examine a particular file. Humans have fought over 8,000 recorded wars among themselves? And yet they still exist? Senior Analyst Minsu nodded. Correct, Commander. They appear highly resilient. Despite their internal conflicts, they've developed complex systems of alliance and mediation. The Taurian commander leaned closer to the display. The hegemony's initial intelligence had painted humans as a fractured, primitive species, technologically inferior but abundant in valuable resources. This new information changed everything. Their unity is recent, Officer Hanbin added. Only in the last century did they form a truly global government. Our initial scans were based on outdated information. Daeho growled, his throat sac inflating with frustration. An inexcusable error. Intelligence Chief Junho will answer for this when we return. He turned to his tactical officer. What of their defensive capabilities? Unknown, Commander, replied Tactical Officer Kyungmi, her fingers dancing across her console. We detect basic orbital platforms, but their energy signatures are inconsistent with weapons systems we recognize. The command deck fell silent as implications settled in. The hegemony had never failed in a subjugation. Their reputation depended on swift, decisive action that left target species no choice but surrender. Yet these humans spoke as equals despite their apparent technological disadvantage. They are bluffing, Daeho finally declared. We will demonstrate our power. Target that uninhabited outpost on their moon. Minimal force, just enough to show our capabilities. The weapons officer nodded and began the targeting sequence. The Taurian beam weapon charged with a high-pitched whine, then released a flash of green energy toward the lunar surface. A small explosion bloomed silently on the gray landscape. Impact successful, reported the weapons officer. Target destroyed. Send the message, Daeho ordered. Tell them this was merely a fraction of our capabilities. Demand their surrender. Minutes passed. Then the communications console chimed. Commander, said Officer Yijun, her voice tight with confusion. We're receiving a response. Audio and visual. The main screen flickered to life, showing a stern-faced human woman seated at a simple desk. Behind her hung a blue flag with an image of Earth. This is Council President Boare of the United Defense Council, she stated calmly. Your unprovoked attack on our lunar research facility has been noted. We have evacuated all personnel from that sector. Daeho stepped forward. Then you understand the power we wield. Submit to our terms and... We do not negotiate under threat, the human interrupted, her voice level. However, we remain open to peaceful dialogue when you are ready to speak as equals. The transmission ended abruptly. Insolence, hissed Sub-Commander Taejun. They speak as if they have a choice. Daeho was about to respond when alarm klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship. Multiple energy signatures detected, shouted the sensor officer. They were massed somehow emerging from behind Earth's moon and the fourth planet. The tactical display updated to show dozens of small craft moving into formation. They weren't particularly large, but they moved with precision that suggested advanced propulsion systems. "Impossible," whispered Daiho. "There was no indication of this fleet in our scans." "Commander," called the communications officer urgently. "We're being hailed by the human vessels." A different human appeared on screen, wearing a dark uniform with silver insignia. "This is Admiral Sunmi of Earth Defense Force. Your act of aggression has activated our defensive protocols. We request you withdraw beyond the orbit of Pluto while diplomatic channels remain open." Before Daiho could respond, the sensor officer called out again. "Commander! Energy readings from Earth itself. They're activating something on the surface." The display showed multiple points on Earth's surface glowing with power signatures unlike anything in the Taurian database. "Analysis," demanded Daiho. "Unknown technology," responded the science officer. "But the power output suggests weapons capabilities far beyond what our intelligence indicated." Daiho felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The hegemony's superior technology had always guaranteed victory. But this situation didn't match any conquest scenario in his experience. "Pull back to safe distance," he ordered finally. "Maintain weapons lock but take no action." As the Taurian vessel retreated to the outer system, the human ships maintained formation, not pursuing but clearly monitoring. In his private chamber, Daiho reviewed the data again. The humans had hidden their true capabilities. They had prepared for this encounter, perhaps for years. Most troubling of all, they showed remarkable restraint despite having the means to fight. "Send a message to High Command," he instructed his communications officer. "The human situation is more complex than anticipated. Request full diplomatic team and additional intelligence resources." For the first time in his military career, Commander Daiho faced an uncomfortable truth: the Taurian hegemony had gravely miscalculated. The Taurian High Command did not take Commander Daiho's report well. Their species had conquered 17 worlds across 3 star systems, and never once had they been forced to retreat. The message that arrived on Daiho's command ship was clear: demonstrate Taurian superiority or be replaced. "We deploy the second wave at dawn," Daiho informed his officers. His inner eyelids flickered with stress, but his voice remained firm. "The capital ship's Dominator and Subjugator will join us. 3 ships against their scattered fleet." Subcommander Taejun bowed his head. "The humans will break when they see our true power." As the 3 massive Taurian vessels moved toward Earth in tight formation, their sensors detected no immediate response from the humans. The planet appeared peaceful, almost defenseless. "Strange," muttered the sensor officer. "Their ships have withdrawn. No defensive posture detected." Daiho frowned. "It must be a trick. Maintain full shields and scan continuously." The Taurian fleet entered Earth's orbit without incident. Commander Daiho stood before the communications array, his formal armor gleaming under the lights. "People of Earth," he began, "you have seen a mere fraction of our might. Now witness the full power of the Taurian hegemony." He nodded to his weapons officer. "Target their orbital platforms. Destroy them." Green energy beams lanced out from the 3 ships, striking the human satellites and stations. Explosions flashed silently in the blackness of space. "Targets destroyed," reported the weapons officer. Daiho waited for the panicked human response. None came. "Send the next message," he ordered, confused by the silence. Before the communications officer could comply, the ship's alarms screamed to life. "Multiple vessels detected," shouted the sensor officer. "They're everywhere." The tactical display transformed as hundreds of human ships suddenly appeared, emerging from what seemed to be hidden positions throughout the solar system. Some had been disguised as asteroids. Others had been running silent behind moons and planets. A few appeared to materialize from empty space itself. "Stealth technology," whispered Science Officer Jiho in awe. "Their hulls absorb our scanning beams." The human fleet moved with shocking precision, encircling the 3 Taurian warships in a complex 3-dimensional formation. At the center of the formation, a sleek vessel with blue markings approached. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer. A human woman appeared on screen. She wore a simple dark uniform with silver stars on the collar. Her expression was neither angry nor fearful, just focused. "This is Admiral Sunmi of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said calmly. "You have destroyed unmanned platforms containing only scientific equipment. We anticipated this action. Real human personnel were evacuated days ago." Daeho's throat sack inflated with anger. "You hide your fleet, then claim moral superiority? Fight with honor." Admiral Sunmi's expression didn't change. "We fight to protect, not to prove ourselves. Your ships are now surrounded. We could destroy you, but that is not our way." As if to demonstrate her point, several human vessels moved into firing positions. Tactical displays showed weapon locks from multiple directions. "Weapons ready," reported Tae-jun nervously. "But there are too many targets." Daeho was about to order an attack when the science officer called out. "Commander! Energy readings from the human flagship." His voice faltered. "It's unlike anything in our database. Power levels exceeding our maximum weapons capacity by at least threefold." On the screen, Admiral Sunmi continued, "We've studied your previous conquests, Commander. The Taurians always strike first, overwhelm with superior firepower, then offer submission terms. We chose a different approach." The tactical display updated to show more human ships emerging from Mars orbit. These vessels were larger, clearly their heavy warships held in reserve. "Impossible," muttered Daeho. "Our intelligence indicated nothing like this." "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see," replied Sunmi. "We've been preparing for first contact with advanced species for generations." For the first time in his military career, Commander Daeho recognized true defeat. His ships were surrounded. The human weapons were locked on critical systems. Even if they fought, they could not win. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. Admiral Sunmi's expression softened slightly. "The same as before. We remain open to fair negotiation. We do not seek your destruction or submission, only mutual respect and peaceful cooperation." As the human ships maintained their formation, a small vessel broke away from their fleet and approached the Taurian flagship. The communications display showed a familiar face, Ambassador Ji-young. "Commander Daeho," she said, "we invite you to neutral ground to discuss terms that benefit both our peoples. Our ships will stand down if yours do the same." The tactical officer looked to Daeho, awaiting orders. The commander stood silent for a long moment, studying the human fleet's formation. There was something unusual about their tactics. They had positioned themselves to disable, not destroy. They had overwhelming force, yet showed restraint. "Lower weapons," Daeho finally ordered. "Tell the ambassador we will meet." As the tension on the bridge eased slightly, Daeho turned to his science officer. "These humans, they fight like no species we have encountered. They adapt. They plan. They show mercy when they need not." The science officer nodded slowly. "They are dangerous in a way we did not anticipate." "Yes," agreed Daeho, watching the ambassador's ship approach. "Not because of their weapons, but because they think differently than we do." The Taurian High Council's emergency transmission reached Commander Daeho as he prepared for negotiations with the humans. His superiors had reviewed his battle data and reached an alarming conclusion: direct military action against Earth was no longer viable. Too much hegemony prestige was at stake to risk outright defeat. "Grand Emissary Tae-woo will arrive within 12 hours, the Supreme Counselor's message stated. "He will handle all further negotiations. You will provide military support only." Daeho felt both relief and shame as he acknowledged the order. His career might never recover from this failed conquest, but at least Grand Emissary Tae-woo would bear the burden of salvaging the situation. The emissary's personal shuttle docked with the flagship the next day. Tae-woo strode onto the command deck, his ceremonial robes flowing behind him. Unlike the military Taurians, his skin was a lighter shade of gray, and delicate jewelry adorned his long fingers, marks of his high diplomatic status. "Commander," he said with a slight nod, "I've studied your reports. These humans are unusual. They are dangerous, Daeho corrected. They hid their true strength and capabilities. And now they speak of mutual benefit as if we are equals. Taewoo's inner eyelids flickered in amusement. Military might is not the only path to conquest, Commander. The hegemony has absorbed many worlds through superior negotiation. I will show you how it's done. The meeting was set at the same orbital platform where first contact had occurred. As the Taurian delegation approached, Daeho noticed something different about the human setup. The room now contained historical artifacts, digital displays, and what appeared to be a large three-dimensional star map. Ambassador Ji Young greeted them warmly. Welcome, Grand Emissary Taewoo. We are honored by your presence. The emissary bowed slightly. The honor is mine, Ambassador. I come with the full authority of the hegemony to resolve our misunderstanding. Ji Young smiled. Wonderful. Please, meet my negotiation team. 5 humans stepped forward, each introducing themselves with a different expertise: trade, technology, cultural exchange, military cooperation, and interspecies law. Daeho noticed they all carried data tablets but no visible weapons. Let us begin, said Taewoo confidently. The hegemony proposes a protectorate status for Earth. We will provide defensive support and technological guidance in exchange for resource access and basing rights. This arrangement has worked well for many developing worlds. Ambassador Ji Young nodded respectfully. An interesting proposal. Before we respond, might I share something of our history? Without waiting for permission, she activated the room's main display. It showed images of human conflict through the ages: primitive warriors with spears, armies with gunpowder weapons, modern soldiers with advanced technology. Humans have fought over 15,000 documented wars among ourselves, Ji Young explained. But more importantly, we've negotiated over 100,000 peace treaties. The display shifted to show ancient scrolls, signatures on parchment, international conferences. Each time we found peace, we learned, she continued. We learned that lasting agreements must benefit all parties. One-sided arrangements always fail, leading to renewed conflict. Taewoo shifted uncomfortably. The hegemony's arrangements do not fail. Our protectorates are stable and productive. For how long? Asked the human trade expert. Sangmin, 3 generations? 5? History shows that unequal partnerships collapse eventually, often violently. Before Taewoo could respond, the humans presented their counter-proposal, a series of mutually beneficial agreements that would grant the Taurians some resource access while establishing cultural and technological exchanges. The terms were carefully structured to protect both species' interests. We've studied 17 different alien diplomatic frameworks, Ji Young explained. Your approach is common among expanding empires, but rarely sustainable long-term. Taewoo had never faced such resistance in negotiations. Whenever he proposed a term favorable to the hegemony, the humans countered with historical examples of why such arrangements failed. When he tried to assert Taurian military superiority, they acknowledged it respectfully before steering the conversation back to mutual benefit. Hours passed. Then days. The Grand Emissary requested breaks to consult with his superiors. Each time he returned with new tactics, the humans seemed prepared. How do they do this? He asked Daeho privately after a particularly frustrating session. It's as if they've practiced negotiating with us for years. They have, Daeho replied grimly. Not with us specifically, but with each other. Their planet has thousands of different cultures and languages. They've been negotiating among themselves since before they had written language. On the 5th day, the human cultural expert showed them something extraordinary: a vast library of fictional stories humans had created about first contact with alien species. Some portrayed peaceful exchanges, others depicted wars and conquests. We've been imagining this meeting for centuries, Ji Young explained. Testing every possible scenario in our literature, films, and simulations. When you arrived, we had already considered most negotiation paths. Taewoo stared at the display in disbelief. You prepared for us before you knew we existed? We prepared for someone, Ji Young corrected gently. The universe is too vast for us to be alone. As the session ended that day, Tae-woo returned to the flagship with a disturbing realization. The humans weren't just skilled negotiators, they had turned diplomacy itself into a weapon more powerful than any in the Taurian arsenal. They didn't fight to defeat their opponents, they negotiated to transform them into partners. For the first time in his distinguished career, Grand Emissary Tae-woo sent a message to the High Council recommending something unprecedented, a truly equal alliance with another species. The Taurian High Council chamber fell into stunned silence as the final terms of the Earth-Taurian agreement appeared on their displays. Grand Emissary Tae-woo stood before them, his posture straight despite his exhaustion after weeks of negotiation. "This cannot be correct," said Elder Counselor Jin-ho, his voice quivering with either age or anger. "Equal trade rights? Technology exchange programs? Cultural preservation guarantees? This reads like an agreement between equals." Tae-woo bowed his head slightly. "It is, Elder. The humans would accept nothing less." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. For 6 centuries, the hegemony had expanded through conquest or one-sided agreements that barely disguised subjugation. This document before them was something entirely different. Supreme Counselor Eun-ji leaned forward, inner eyelids blinking rapidly. "You were sent to salvage our dignity after the military failure. Instead, you return with friendship?" "I return with the only agreement possible," Tae-woo replied firmly. "The humans possess technologies we did not detect initially. Their tactical thinking is unlike ours. Most importantly, they have elevated negotiation to an art form we cannot match." The council viewing screen activated, showing recorded moments from the Earth negotiations. The counselors watched as human diplomatic teams presented historical precedents, offered creative compromises, and persistently steered discussions toward mutual benefit. "Observe their technique," Tae-woo continued. "They negotiate not to win concessions but to create partnerships that transform both parties. I have never encountered this approach in 50 years of diplomatic service." The council chambers remained quiet as the recordings played on. Finally, military advisor Q1 spoke up. "If we reject this agreement, what are our options?" Commander Daeho, standing behind Tae-woo, stepped forward. "Military victory is uncertain. Their fleet is more substantial than we initially believed. Their weapons technology rivals our own in several key areas. Most concerning is their adaptability. They learn and adjust tactics faster than any species we've encountered." The Supreme Counselor's facial ridges darkened with displeasure. "Then you recommend surrender?" "I recommend wisdom," Daeho replied carefully. "The humans do not seek our defeat or submission. They genuinely desire alliance. Our analysis suggests such an alliance would increase hegemony prosperity by 18% within a decade." 3 days later, the Earth-Taurian agreement was formally signed. News spread quickly through the 17 worlds of the hegemony, then outward to other spacefaring civilizations. The reaction was universal disbelief. The mighty Taurians, never before stopped in their expansion, had signed an equal partnership with a previously unknown species. On the neutral orbital platform where it all began, Commander Daeho stood beside Ambassador Ji-young, watching as human and Taurian engineers worked together to expand the facility into a permanent diplomatic outpost. "Your people build quickly," Daeho observed. Ji-young nodded. "We've had much practice rebuilding after our own conflicts." A small ship approached, bearing markings of the Zentari Collective, another spacefaring civilization that had been watching events unfold from a distance. "Your first joint diplomatic test," Ji-young said, nodding toward the incoming vessel. "The Zentari have been sending messages for days, trying to understand what happened." Daeho's throat sac expanded slightly with amusement. "They fear you now. Word has spread through 7 star systems already. The whispers grow with each telling." "What whispers?" Ji-young asked. "We refuse to negotiate with humans," Daeho quoted. "It began as a joke among junior officers who watched our diplomats struggle against your team. Now it spreads among all species who observe from afar." Ji-young frowned. "But that's not true. We specifically do want to negotiate." You misunderstand, Deho explained. It's not your policy, it's what other species are saying among themselves. They fear sitting across the table from human negotiators. You don't seek to win concessions, you transform your opponents into partners. That is unsettling to many cultures. As the Zentari ship docked, Deho was assigned as military liaison to Earth, a position of honor despite his failed conquest attempt. He had come to respect the humans in ways he never expected. Their strength wasn't just in hidden fleets or advanced weapons. It was in their history. Thousands of years of fighting among themselves had taught them the true value of peace. 6 months later, 3 more civilizations had signed agreements modeled on the Earth-Taurian Pact. A new type of interstellar community was forming, built on principles of mutual benefit and respect. In his private quarters on Earth's moon, where he now served as the hegemony's ambassador, Commander Deho recorded his final thoughts on first contact. We came to conquer a primitive world and found instead a species whose greatest weapon was not their technology, but their experience with themselves. Humans transformed survival into an art through cooperation. They learned from their bloody history what took other species millennia to discover, that lasting power comes not from domination, but from alliance. The galaxy will never be the same.